Alright guys, before I begin this video, I am doing two reviews. This is the extended version and I have a shorter version too. If you prefer the shorter version, hit the link down below and check that out. But if you're ready for the extended version, let's go. This is the Galaxy S21, a phone that had to make compromises in this increasingly competitive market of mid-tier phones. Premium phones are becoming more premium with a premium price tag to match. And if you want something more premium, Samsung has the S21 Ultra. When I have that review done, I'll link it down below in the description for you to check that out. But today's video is all about the Galaxy S21. It comes in at $799, which is $200 cheaper than last year's S20. I think it's only fair to grade on a curve based on price, as this phone doesn't have all the same premium materials and specs that you'll find on a phone this year for $1,000. First, let's talk about these compromises and get that out of the way. The phone is made from plastic, and it's not plastic that we've seen in the past. This plastic is smooth to the touch, fingerprint resistant, and it's durable. I don't hate plastic phones at all. It just has to be done right, and this phone is done right. And I really like how this phone looks, and I dig how it feels. There also isn't a headphone jack as expected, and no SD card slot. The SD card slot is a big one for a lot of people. However, I've moved beyond that. I stream music and my pictures are backed up to Google Photos, which I love. And yes, those things do cost money, but to me it's better than lugging around an SD card between devices at the end of the day. Now, many people have not moved on, and it will be an issue for a lot of people, and I totally get it, but what other phone are you going to buy with an SD card slot now? Lastly, one trend that I can't get behind is the removal of the AC adapter that plugs into the wall. Apple did it first and Samsung followed, and I'm sure other companies will do it too. Yes, you can use your previous charger, but I think if you're paying this much money, you should get an adapter with the phone. I said that about the iPhone, I said it about Samsung, and I will say it about whomever does it next. So yes, compromises are real. People hate it. But I don't want this to take away from the fact of how great this phone actually is. If you expect a totally new experience with the S21 over the S20, you may be looking in the wrong spot, as this phone is a refinement. This phone has gotten better in nearly every aspect of using the phone. I think this is mainly due to software, not so much on the hardware side. Let's talk about how the phone feels in the hand day to day. At this size, it's not one-handed friendly all the way, but it's very easy to use and it's comfortable. If you do want a larger experience, you can go with the S21 Plus, which is essentially the same phone internally as the S20 with a few small differences. I think Samsung, as always, makes a beautiful phone, and they even find a way to make this camera module on the back look pretty attractive. The on-screen fingerprint reader has gotten better. It's actually larger and easier to hit, but I still like Face to Unlock. I will say it is nice to have both options, because when you're out and about, you're obviously wearing a mask, so having the option to just use your fingerprint is really nice. I wasn't a fan of how the phone looked last year. I thought the camera module was too much, but this year, I think it looks good. You know, the two-tone color design is a great change, and the colors that are available for this phone are unique and fun. Of course, if none of those colors tickle your fancy, my sponsor Dbrand can give you a unique look for less than 15 bucks. These vinyl skins do not only provide a different texture, but they can also give you a unique look that you won't find anywhere else. Hit my links below to Dbrand your device. So this phone does have the latest specs that you can expect from a Galaxy device. Internally, it has a Snapdragon 888 processor, which is the newest one available, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and 128 or 256 gigabytes of base storage. The screen has adaptive refresh at 120 Hz, Full HD+. I know some people would see this as a compromise, as last year's phone was 120 Hz and it was Quad HD, but not at the same time. This year, there is no Quad HD option. I think if you're looking at specs on paper, you can see it as a downgrade, but if you're using the phone, Full HD 120 Hz was better all around, so they're just sticking with that setting. Now, speaking of the screen, it's not much more to say than it looks good. Samsung is right up there with the best screens available. It's super bright, vibrant, and OLED, so the black levels are superb. You can also fine tune the screen to match it to how you like. It's also an eye shield comfort mode, which helps with removing blue light. You can even customize that to make it perfect for your liking. You can even set up schedules for it to kick on automatically too. A lot of cool stuff here. I know with Samsung phones, there are a litany of settings and configurations, and sometimes it's a bit much. But as a person who loves to tinker and customize things, it's great to have this much control and flexibility. But it can be overwhelming to many people, so that's something to be mindful of. Now, since this phone is running the latest processor from Snapdragon, I don't need to talk about performance too much, since it's always the same thing. It's super fast, responsive, and the high refresh screen makes performance feel even faster than before. The big thing is, how will this phone age over time? For the heck of it, I whipped out my S10 just to see if it's still a pretty fast phone, and I loaded up some new software, and you know what? It still runs just as fine. So I think the S21 will be in the same boat after a couple of years. Now, speaking of software, I do like One UI from Samsung. It provides a lot of those customizations I mentioned before, and overall, I think it makes the phone feel more complete. Whereas stock Android can sometimes feel bare or sometimes feels like it's missing a couple things. Look, there are too many features to mention when it comes to One UI, but I do like theme support. You can easily change how the phone looks with just a quick download. It's not perfect, as sometimes you may have icons that don't match up, and most of these themes are like $1.50 or $2, but still, you can make your phone look different by just tapping a button, and it's better than nothing. There's also Game Launcher, which puts all your games in one spot on your phone. Inside, you have a game performance optimizer, and this lets you tweak settings that only applies during game. So stuff like that is really cool, and that is available because of the One UI. But with One UI, there are a couple of things that I need to mention. I feel like Samsung is using Android OS as its vehicle to put software on your devices, which I get, but it does leave for some confusion. Like the Galaxy Store versus the Google Play Store, two different calendar apps, Gallery versus Google Photos, and a few other examples. It causes confusion for many people who can't tell the difference. Take it from me, as my family's tech support, this happens a lot. You can easily fix this by picking which app you like and removing or hiding the other one, but at the same time, it's just confusing for a lot of people. The camera is always a big one, and I'm gonna spend a lot of time here. You know, the point and shoot cameras are dead now. Cell phone cameras have taken over. The most viral videos that we've seen are all captured on cell phones. So people want a good camera to capture that memory. The S21 and the S21 Ultra have different camera setups, so I will talk about the Ultra in a completely different video. So up front, we have a 10 megapixel camera, and that's capable of doing video from 30 frames per second to 60 frames per second. One of my biggest criticisms of Samsung's front-facing camera is when you take a selfie, it brightens the skin. So now when you open up the camera app, it tells you, do you want bright or do you want normal looking selfies? Do you want something realistic or do you want it brighten your skin a little bit? You know how I am. I really want it to look natural. I don't want the brighter skin, but now it actually gives you a choice to turn that off. I think the natural looking selfies are better, but of course you now have that option. I think portrait mode is really solid. Is it perfect? No. You know, it may struggle a bit if someone has a lot of hair, like on my son. Sometimes it cuts my ears off, but overall, unless you're pixel peeping and zooming in, I think it looks really good. It separates the background from the foreground, and the picture is very sharp and detailed. I do think in low light, selfies could be a bit better still. They still have a little yellowish tint to it, and unless you're very steady, the image can be a bit blurry as it takes a little bit longer to take the photo. Overall, I am happy with the front-facing camera, just hopefully next year it gets a little bit better. The rear cameras, there's a lot going on here, but I'll tell you that it's exactly as the same as the Galaxy S20. So if you love that camera, you'll love this one. There is a triple camera setup on the back with ultra wide, wide, and telephoto. Let's start with ultra wide. The ultra wide camera is just fun. It's a great way to get a larger perspective of an area, but it's best used for landscapes or tall buildings. I wouldn't suggest using it for a group of people, since it can make them look a little weird and stretched out towards the edges as it kind of bows a little bit. Also, the ultra-wide lens does not have autofocus. Also, indoors is not the best without great lighting. Using the perfect scenario, ultra-wide can be a useful tool and something that's super fun to use. The wide-angle lens, which is the default camera, to me is the best lens on the camera. Outdoors, I love the image that it produced with HDR enabled. This camera is just my favorite as an outdoor camera. There is something going on with Samsung software that can really just pull the image in and just makes it look stunning when you take pictures of things outside. The sky is punchy and the colors are great. Everything about it produces a great image. It may not be the most realistic image around, but at the end of the day, you're posting these photos to social media or you're looking at them later and you're not really caring about the accuracy. You just want to know if it's a good looking picture or not. And it's a good looking picture. Portrait mode on the rear camera is pretty solid as well, and you'll see the same qualities that you did from the front facing camera as far as the software. You'll get nice portrait shots even if you have more than one person in the scene. It does require you to be at a certain distance, which isn't a big deal, but at the same time, it does require a little bit of maneuvering or having the person move or you move back and forth. It's not a big deal, but just don't think you're gonna be using it, taking a picture of a kid who moves around a lot, as I can't get a portrait shot of my son because he's always moving. And you may end up with photos looking like this. This camera also has a 3x hybrid zoom, which I think is really good. Taking pictures from 3x away, it doesn't lose any light or any image quality. I have nothing bad to say about it. The 10x zoom, things are not as sharp, but it's still usable. Then we have the space zoom, which is 30x on this camera. It's using software trips and optics and all these things to zoom really far. It was used as a party trick last year as the practicality wasn't there, but this year, to me, I think it looks better and it's usable. Subjects that are far away, like a building or trying to read a sign, that's where it works, but not so much for people. There's also a lot of software changes that we can find in this year's camera, and one is director mode. This will allow you to use multiple cameras simultaneously and switch them during a live recording. I do think this would be pretty cool at sporting events or somewhere where you want to have different cameras. At the same time, you want it to look smooth. You don't want to be zooming in and out and stuff like that. I'm not sure how much it'll be used, but I think it's a nifty feature if someone knows how to use it. The first time you go into the camera and you go to take a picture, it suggests that you use 64 megapixel mode. When you do that, you lose the ability to use different lenses, and actually the photo doesn't look as good as using the standard mode because it's not using HDR. Take a look at this picture inside my garage. The washed out image is the one from 64 megapixels, and the good looking one is just regular HDR mode. 4K at 60 frames per second is available for video, and so is 8K at 24 frames per second. Both camera modes are impressive to see on a cell phone. The 4K mode in general looks good, and adding 60 frames per second gives you more flexibility in post to slow things down. Or if you just want 60 frames per second for video for something much more smoother, it's there. My favorite thing about video mode is that it has tracking autofocus, so it tracks the subject even after it moves or the camera moves. It makes it very useful when recording kids, animals, anything that moves, or doing some nice camera shots. It has 8K video. Yes, 8K is available on this camera, but I don't have an 8K TV or an 8K monitor to test how it really looks, but it's there, it works, it takes up a lot of space. A few more things before I let you go. This is a longer video, I know. Battery life and reverse charging. Battery life is still solid at around 7 to 8 hours of screen on time, depending on usage. Since I'm at home and I've been on Wi-Fi this whole time, I couldn't test battery life for an extended amount of time on 5G, but it tests right up there with other phones and surpassing many phones that I've covered recently. It does support 25-watt charging, which is pretty fast still, but this needs to change as we're starting to see faster and faster charging phones. And oh, of course, phone doesn't come with a charging brick too, right? It'll be interesting to see how Samsung navigates this charging speed without having an extra power brick. Let's see. Reverse charging, if you want to use that, I think it works best with the Galaxy Buds Pro. You set them on the back of the phone for around 5 minutes and you get an hour of battery life on the Galaxy Buds Pro. That's pretty cool. And I guess before I go, there is one more thing that sort of bothers me, that there are ads sprinkled within the operating system. Like a big one is when you go into weather, there's a big ad at the top of the screen. I don't like being served ads on my device that I purchased. I kind of feel like ads belongs on things that are free, not phones that I buy. Of course, you can go into settings, turn that stuff off, but at the same time, it's just not a great look for me. There was a lot of things that I said about this phone, and for good reason. This is a super solid phone with some great features. For $799, this is a solid value, and you can actually get it for even cheaper if you trade a phone in. Now, many people will get hung up on things that it does not do, but for the things that it does, it's great. This phone is a great compromise. Yes, you give up things, but you save $200 on improvements and everything across the board. Kevin the Tech Ninja. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe. I'll catch you guys later.